wondering where I found this place. I knew it was here for the longest time, but it's only about a mile from my house, and it's great. Everything around me is houses and concrete, but this is really kind of nice. This is what my son calls the castle, and we come out here and we throw these bombs at each other that are just these rubber balls, and he calls this the Forest of Doom, and eventually I'll take you over to the Lake of Doom, which is just around the corner. James McCarthy says, "Hi John, for my next project I'm interested in the idea of running the sound of my acoustic upright piano through some sort of outboard gear guitar pedals to distort the sound and play with the sound live. I was wondering if this is something you have done before, and if you have, what your approach was and what gear you used. Thanks, John. Keep up the amazing work." I did do a video on this. It's called Running My Synths Through Outboard Gear. I had a better title than that. I run both my guitars through it, and I have it set up to where I can run my computer out into it and back in. So check out that video, and hopefully that'll answer your questions. White Deer, about your efforts to be a successful musician. I'm trying to do music for a living, and I'm really feel feared. Yeah. I think that's probably the emotion that you should feel. It's incredibly difficult. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's taken me a long time to get to a place to where I made any kind of a living. I did a lot of stuff for free. I played a lot of gigs. It takes a while. It's difficult, and I can't offer quick fixes on anything. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, then join the club. I think that's how we all feel, and I don't want to diminish your feelings at all. I'm not trying to do that. I have yet to meet anybody that just stumbled into something big. I've met some people that got some good opportunities early in life, early in their career, and then the music business got to them and they didn't have that same amount of success, and they ended up frustrating. And I'm on the other end of that spectrum, where I was very frustrated at the beginning, and only 15 years into it professionally do I feel like I've at least found some opportunities that I enjoy and I think kind of fit what I do best. So just make music. I didn't make enough music. I spent a lot of time worrying about other things and not creating, and feeling this, imposter syndrome that people talk about so much, where you think you're not good enough to do it. So just keep working, keep putting your music out there. And if your music is good, I think you'll find an opportunity. Now, I also know a lot of people who are talented that never got their opportunity. So I want to be encouraging, but I also know that, there's more to life than a career in music, and you can enjoy music and love music and not get paid to do it. Chris Bell, thanks for asking, John. Do you have any tips or advice on establishing a track running order for an album? And a related question, how would you go about making an album of pieces that were recorded over an extended period, almost a year, sound cohesive? Ooh. Let's start with the last part. I've done that in the past, where you change as a writer over the course of a year, and the things that you do sound different. Maybe the plugins change or the instruments change. And so I think it's good to always kind of revisit every track, remix them all together at the end, and also maybe there's a way to replace some instruments that could be somewhat cohesive. Now, we want everything to sound different, but at the same time, we want there to be some cohesiveness in the sounds. And so I've done that in the past. There's remixing with new ears and with the things that you've learned over the past year, and adding in a couple new instruments here and there is probably enough to make it sound cohesive. Now, as far as track album goes, I don't know if you're talking about an artist album or a production music album, because those are very different. Artist album, I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody know the answer to that? It's fun to think about how track listings came about from years and years ago, on vinyl, how you had big tracks at the beginning and they had to get smaller because of the dynamic range of the vinyl as it got closer to the center, and the speed of the needle and the friction and I don't know, I'm really sounding stupid here. That affected the way that we lay out albums. And then that transitioned into tape and then CDs. And I think you want to tell a story with your music always. So if there's a way to tell a story, a lot of times there might be a beginning track that makes a lot of sense and an ending track. And then I would always try to take the listener on a ride. But that's so difficult, and you may need to let friends of yours help you with that, because if you have been listening to your music from the beginning, you've completely lost any ability to make good decisions about some of these matters. So it's best to bring in some help. Now, for a production music album, what's interesting about that is the same type of thing. Back in the day, and Christian Henson has made a great video on this, how almost all of the music that was at the top of an album or a vinyl or a cassette got used the most, because people would physically have to listen to the first track and the second track. And when we put albums together, publishers still put the best tracks at the top, the ones that they think are going to be the most usable to their clients. However, with all the metadata and search engines, that 10th and 11th track is much more useful now than it was a decade ago. Zach Canella says, how do you decide what the next gear purchase is when the list seems endless? Okay, this is an incredibly different challenge for all of us. And I would love for you to, in the comments, to put your answers to this. And now that I've gotten into video, I have cameras and microphones for cameras and lights and microphones and synthesizers and all things that I want to buy. But for me, what I try to do musically is the way that I work on music is usually theme-based and albums, that kind of thing. So I know going into it that I'm going to be working on a certain type of sound. So that's when I buy the plug-in that makes the most sense for those sounds, or that's when I buy the synth that makes the most sense for that album. And so that's the way that I try to do it. Another thing I want to say, and I want to be careful saying this because I'm by no means just like money everywhere. But now that I have a little bit more consistency in my income, I do try to save up for the guitars and the microphones that are going to be of value. Good microphones, good guitars, they maintain their value. And so you buy cheap guitars, you can get what you need out of them, and it's probably going to be fantastic. And so do that. And I have done that, and I have a lot of cheap guitars. But now I'm to the point where I'd rather save a little bit longer and buy something. I've also got this, what am I going to give my kids? I could buy this cheap guitar, it's not going to be worth anything, or I could spend a little bit more money and wait a little bit longer and get the Fender P-Bass American-made version instead of the cheaper versions that, but that's all dumb because they sound amazing now. So don't listen to anything I have to say. Buy something that sounds good, and when you pick it up, you play good. That's my advice. From Westwood Instruments, which I believe this is Rob. And if you're not familiar with Westwood, he makes some great instruments. I think it's a relatively new company in the past few years, and it's fantastic, so go check it out. But he wrote, "Hey John, loved your Meyer choir. How else do you encourage and inspire your kids to engage with music? Thank you for all that you do, Rob." How do I do it? I don't. I'm terrible at it. I think my children have decided that they're going to hate everything that I like and like everything that I hate. And I don't know if I'm alone in this, but it can be a bit frustrating. I've learned here in the past years that it's best for me not to push it too hard. I have the instruments laying around the house. I let them pick it up and play it when they want, and hopefully they'll develop something, and I'll absolutely be there to help them along the way. But as far as getting them involved, we may try piano lessons soon here for my youngest. He seems to be interested, and as we get out of the pandemic, maybe that'll be a little bit easier. But yeah, encouraging them, I am not the guy to go to for any kind of answers on that matter. All right, Dip_Jones. Hi John, how about shooting or putting together a short bit of atmospheric video and running a soundtrack competition? That'll get things moving, but you're already putting out some interesting stuff each week. Always look forward to Fridays. Competition. All right, that's scary, and we all know why. What do y'all think about a competition? I'm a little nervous about competitions after what we saw in the past year. The last thing I want to do is upset or anger anybody, and I don't even know what a prize would be. So far, I've made in ad revenue on this channel about $98 after doing this for a year. Now, I just got to monetization recently, and so for those of you that know about how all that works, I'm at the bottom. So I'm not really in a place where I can offer much of a prize, but perhaps there would be a way for it would inspire me to go out and create something interesting with my camera that y'all could score. We'll have to think more about that. If that's something that interests you, let me know. Billy Palmer Music. Has creating this channel impacted your work? Absolutely. A quick backstory. I made a handful of videos, and then about this time last year, Christian Henson started sharing those videos, and thousands of you came over to my channel. And then so I thought, well, I need to make more videos. And then I made more. And around summertime of last year, I thought, I don't know, is this what I need to be doing with my time? And then I got another email from Christian saying he wanted to use one of my sounds as a labs instrument. So that was like, okay, let's keep going. So I went through the release of that. And then I got to the point in November where I thought, I'm going to go a year. And that's April. That's coming up soon. And has it impacted my work? Absolutely. Of course, I write less music because of this channel. But I love doing this, and it's been so inspiring to connect with all of you. And so I don't know where this is going to go or where it's going to lead, or eventually I'm going to have to figure out some ways to make some money doing this. And one of the things I'm planning on doing is releasing some samples that are like premium versions of the some of the sounds that I've already released. I've added a few things and really made the interface look as good as I can, and I'm nervous about it, but I'm hoping to share those with you soon. What's funny is I was having a conversation with our friend David Hillowitz that most of you know, and I was talking about how I just can't help myself. Like, I should just be answering these questions in my studio, but I thought I'll go down to the park and I'll set up multiple angles and I'll do drone shots and I'll do B-roll in between. What am I doing? What am I doing? But I'm getting so much better at this every week, and that's because I learned in production music, writing music every day, that you get better every time you do it. It's really simple, right? Really like elementary level stuff there. And so I took that philosophy into this, where I don't really know what I need to know, but I know that if I get out here and do it, I'll figure it out. And it's led to some opportunities for me to get paid doing some other video related projects. And maybe there'll be a way to kind of balance this out with music in the future. I hope there is. If there's not, I'll go back to doing the thing that really has worked for me. But I'm having too much fun, and this is just so interesting to me that, one, the technology exists for me to do these pretty cool things with the camera, but the community and meeting you all and getting to know you all as best I can through, YouTube comments section or Twitter is really remarkable. What a time we live in. I know that there are a lot of bad things going on in our world, but the ability for us to connect and share our commonalities through YouTube videos each week, and that you on the other side of the world know that there's somebody in Carrollton, Texas who's kind of dealing with the same stuff, and the same for me to you. I mean, why would I quit doing that? So yes, it has affected my work, but in really incredible ways so far. Andy Daw, John, if you had one day per week to work on library music, how would you structure your day? I know I bring up Christian Henson a lot, but he gave us all a piece of advice a year ago about how he tries to start an idea at the end of the day so that when he rolls into the studio the next day, something's already there and doesn't have to start from zero. And I think that's probably a good way to look at it. Go into the night before and see if you can sit down and come up with some kind of basic idea so you're not starting out. Now, one big thing I have learned after writing hundreds and hundreds of tracks and doing videos is that I trust the fact that when I start something, I'm probably going to get somewhere. I think the empty DAW or the blank page is the most terrifying thing for any kind of artist. And I found that it's still terrifying, and I still think I'm never going to do anything good again. But if I start, it leads to something else and something else. So I would try to write a track in a day as best you can, or at least get it to a point where you can come back and make some tweaks or revisions. But I would say start something the night before, or the day before, or the week before, and come into it and try to accomplish one song. You can always go back and do the edits and the revisions, but that's how I would approach it if I was that way. And sometimes with the other things I've got going on and with making videos, I end up having one day a week to write music. So maybe I'm talking to myself here. All right, I've made it to the Lake of Doom. The Music Astronaut, which is a great YouTube name. Hi John, how big or solid is your musical education to get you as far as you are now? To be scoring films, for instance, etc. Excellent channel, cheers. I don't score a ton of films. Most of my writing for media is in the production music world. So I have written some smaller things and some custom jobs, but most of my stuff is just writing a bunch of music. So clarify that. As far as my musical education, it's not very extensive. I started as a guitar player, and then in college playing with bands, and so I learned my numbers, my Nashville numbering, 1, 4, 6 minor, 5, and then that has evolved over the course of years as I've learned backwards. And I guess it's one of those situations where a lot of people like myself, you kind of learn music, you learn to run before you know how to walk, and so there's been a process over the past 10 or 15 years of me trying to fill in the gaps of music theory and figuring that out. So I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know as much as I should. If you listen to my music, I do some orchestral work, but that's not primarily what I do. And so most of the stuff I do is very modern pop, diatonic type music. I don't even know if I'm using the word diatonic right. And so I'm continuing to learn more and more about theory as I go. But that does bring up one interesting point. Is a lot of people like very vanilla sounding music, and vanilla in the meanings of, theory. And so there's always a balance between trying to work in new ideas and being creative and being original and not playing just 1, 4, 5 chords all the time. But some of my most successful music, I just made myself sit on one chord and find other ways to make things interesting. So that doesn't really answer your question. I'm continuing to learn more and more about theory. My degree was in speech communication from Texas A&M University because I had to pick something. And although I speak now, this is edited version of John that you're getting. This is not stand in front of 1,000 people and deliver a speech, John, and inspire people. I like Premiere Pro to communicate. I got into music making pop songs and songs for played at my church and traveled around and played music at different places. The music that I was playing didn't require that I know a ton about theory. It required that I played tasteful music inside of very simple songs. That is one of my goals as I get older, is to continue to learn more and more. So if you have resources for me, please send them my way. There are so many questions, and I'm cold and I'm running out of time, but I'm gonna skip through this and see what I can find. I feel bad that people that ask the earliest questions are not getting them answered. Okay, real quick, from Zach, Weird Check, what does your average day look like? Wake up time, fire up the studio, family time, work time, etc. Okay, pretty simple. It starts at 6 o'clock usually, get the boys ready for school. I take them, except for today, my wife took them so I could do this. And then I get back to the studio around 8, try to work most of the day as best I can. And then around 5, 5:15, the family comes in the door after my wife picks them up usually. Then we cook dinner and then the boys go to bed. And then sometimes I work a little bit more. Most of the time I fall asleep to YouTube videos. And that's almost every day of my life. I'm not one to wake up super, super early, and I can't work really late. So I try to work during the day. And that's the cool thing about the job that I've chosen, and is that I can do that. Years and years ago, I worked at a studio where I had to roll in at about 8 o'clock and work until 3 or 4 in the morning. And that was the most miserable experience of my life. Why would anybody want to do that? I know some of you are okay with it, not me. Ronald Capaun, I'm gonna go with that. What is the better approach, sampling sounds yourself or obtaining libraries? Both, you gotta do both. Sampling stuff yourself takes a long time, but it gives you something that's original and something that's yours and something that you have. And I find that I use those sounds all the time, but you've gotta get other libraries. I mean, we can't sample everything. If you want a big orchestra, you gotta go buy the orchestral libraries. So it's about finding the balance there of both your time and your money. Sam Ellis, when composing for a particular album, what are your critical listening and decision points to remain productive and proactive whilst not, I gotta say whilst more. I really love the way that you all say whilst, it's so great. Not letting yourself being bogged down and overly self-critical with musicians, second nature to think what they are producing is subpar. Insecure musicians, welcome. I've been wanting to do a video just called Insecurity and just start dealing with these things. But we always compare. I always say that I either overestimate my abilities or completely underestimate. I've never just like hit it right on the money. And that's the most difficult thing. I enjoy the challenge of learning new styles, and I enjoy the process of researching new styles. And so there's always that like, okay, let's figure out how to copy what this person's doing on their YouTube tutorial. And then you take that and you add that to all of your interest, and you have all the other thoughts that are going into, say, an album theme, description, all those visuals in your head, and that helps me kind of stay focused and keeps me kind of pointed to where I want to go without, whenever I'm making my personal music, I overthink it all the time. But when I know that I'm writing for something that's not going to be my name plastered all over it, and it's a piece of music that's going to be for something else, it's a lot easier for me to separate myself from the process, and so I don't get bogged down as much, and that helps me. All right, I'm going to answer one more question, and you know what? I'm going to answer Jim Sanger's question, because Jim Sanger, you have been the most encouraging person to my channel. There's a handful of you, and I'll mention you in future videos, but I know that if you don't say something on my comments, then I'm going to worry about you and I'm going to send somebody to check on you. Hi, John. What do you do on those days when you don't feel like making music? Any tricks you use to get in the mood? Well, I think it's similar to what I said regarding to Sam's question, is that I just try to, watch things, be inspired by other YouTube channels, other creators, other music, and let that get me going, because I know that I have whatever it is that keeps me from completely ripping other people off. I can grab some things from other musicians, other composers, and then start working in my own stuff, or putting all the other influences I have together into something that is not going. So I found that when I give myself these specific parameters and I have deadlines and I know that I've got a lot to do in a short amount of time. Those factors combined help keep me away from those moments where I just want to go watch a show. And so now I say all that, Jim, I'm probably going to get back into my room and think, I got nothing today. And it's going to hit me today and it'll hit me tomorrow. But I've learned that I can just get going, get started, fight through it, and I'll usually get into a point, maybe it's a couple hours in. It's like jogging. I've been trying to do that recently. And here's something, guys. When I hit 5,000 subs, if I hit 5,000 subs, I'm gonna run a 5K. So yesterday I ran like a mile and a half and it killed me. But I do remember that when you jog a lot, that first mile is always tough, and then it gets easier. And I haven't got back to that point yet. I'm hoping that comes soon. I'm not there yet. But that's how it is with me and work. It's like I know that first couple minutes or 30 minutes might be challenging, but usually I find my groove and then hours pass and I don't even know where they went. That's all I've got. I'll try to get to the rest of the questions in future videos. I'm really quite cold. We've had a fun stretch of 8-degree weather. A couple days ago it was 80 degrees and I was in this very park in shorts, and now I'm cold again. And so I'm gonna hang it up and get to editing so I can have this for you tomorrow. I appreciate all of you so much, and I look forward to making more videos and continuing these discussions in the future. Talk to you soon.